Hello guys, welcome back to Dharma Geosphere. Uh, Today we'll be interacting on one of the very important topics and debates of Hartshorne and Schaefer. But before we actually go into the main points of the argument of Schaefer against Hartshorne's ideas, we'll try to understand what happened in the context of the American geography. So between the First World War and the Second World War was totally focused on the concept of regional geography. It flourished and remained there as the most acceptable methodology of geography for a very long time. And then came Richard Hartshorne, who further supported this concept, and he was the student and follower of Immanuel Kant and Hettner. So he largely borrowed, maybe selectively, some of the ideas from them, and he continued this focus of regional geography and his own areal differentiation further. But there was a simmering discontent and dissatisfaction among the scholars and the young students of geography regarding this, and this simmering discontent was crystallized mainly around 3 points with reference to the way the methodology of regional geography was emerging and was being continued as the only way of looking at geography. So one of the main contentions or arguments against this regional methodology was the regional study was concentrating too much on pedagogic studies, which could not withstand the scientific scrutiny of the mid-century. And the second point, and equally more important, was this regional stream was dragging through a sequence of apparently unrelated elements related to both physical and human geography, and too much of the physical geography or the human geographic aspects, whether they are related or not, are they being bunched together and put together in the whole framework of this methodology of regional geography, which as the time passed by could not stand the test of time, and there was this simmering heat and dissatisfaction among many of the younger generation of geographers. And the third was this huge success of this pace, particularly in France, gave a sense of falsehood to the student's mind that probably these pace, which are very unique areas or units, are formed not only just in France and around, but also throughout the world. So this was also not acceptable to many of the geographers, that you can falsify the uniqueness of a particular area or a region and then paint it with the same brush throughout the world. So this uniqueness was not accepted because this path neglected what is called, they were looking for the not looking for the general in particular, or not able to generalize this. So these three main points, please remember before you actually start writing about the debate, if that is in question. It is not just because Schaefer said something against what Hartshorne said that the debate. It was simmering, that it was moving from the regional geography methodology to geography being science. So the whole crux of this argument at that point of time in the mid-century was that geography should be treated as science like other sciences, whereas Hartshorne was and his followers were actually standing as a roadblock for this movement of from regional geography to geography as science. So there are a lot of writings about the way Hartshorne had given his concepts and the way he treated geography, and how Schaefer said, but some complex studies and writings and all that, but just don't bother. I'll give you just 5 points. Just remember those and don't waste too much time on this particular topic. Just remember these 5 points, what Hartshorne said and what Schaefer had said. And finally, I'll tell you whether actually there was any necessity for such a debate or not, or it's just the misperceptions of what Schaefer had thought Hartshorne had said, and how Hartshorne later clarifies and explains what he actually meant. So just don't waste too much time on this. Just tune yourself to these 5 points and then move on. Okay. Otherwise, one can get carried away by reading Hartshorne's book and Schaefer's so many interpretations and all that. Just stick to the main points. Okay. So Hartshorne described geography. He gave this very orderly arrangement and all that stuff, very specific definition, very nice. So he explained that geography is a unique field with very complex variables which cannot be controlled the way the other sciences are controlled in the lab experiments, etc., to come out with an outcome by studying a particular methodology within the lab conditions. So he said, since geography is so complex and so variable and so different and so unique and cannot be studied in the like other sciences in the lab, it is therefore exceptional as a discipline. And then Schaefer argues that in fact, he totally refuses this argument that geography is exceptional. He says geography is, the methodology is more or less the same, the characteristics, the way we deal with the science are the same as we deal with the other sciences. And he gives an example of astronomy, where no such lab experiments or controlled experiments or any descriptive methodology is used like in geography, but still astronomy remains a science. So by the same analogy, geography should also be treated as science, and there is nothing exceptional about it. So this is one point. The second point is regarding making universal laws. Hartshorne felt that no two finite areas of geography are the same, and so you cannot make any generalized framework of laws for something which are totally different. So if you have to make laws, you have to make laws for each of the unit or each of what he called as the unique place. So since it is not possible to make so many laws for so many unique areas spread all over the world, he said either if you have so many laws or you have no laws at all. So if you have so many laws, the purpose of making universalized laws is lost. So his argument is that is how he said it cannot be studied in such a systematic way wherein you can make unified or universal laws within the framework of one particular discipline. Schaefer argues that the way you scientifically study a subject like geography, the systematic investigation involves two processes. One that is regional, wherein you study all the aspects of that particular region and then come out with some kind of an outcome or a conclusion. And there is also another way which not just studies one particular region, but it studies one region related to the other, that is the relations of two regions. So when you are studying or relating two or more regions, you can find laws which can govern the spatial patterns of such interrelated regions. So through these spatial patterns, you can generalize and form a systematic law or guideline which can govern all those regions which are related to each other through this spatial pattern. So, and based on this deduction of what is the outcome of such an investigation, you can formulate and also deduct through various quantitative measures and calculations some kind of a general systematic study, like the way it is done in other sciences. So it is not that we cannot universalize or make generalized guidelines and laws for a subject like geography. So the Hartshorne's contention that universal laws cannot be made in geography does not stand the test of time, and Schaefer and company do not agree with this. And the third point is about the description. As I told you, he was totally Kant's philosophy is what was followed by Hartshorne. So he said, like how Kant says that both geography and history are descriptive in nature, like no other subject is. So they are totally different from the other subject. So Hartshorne also, following what Kant has said, that since geography is descriptive, it is not similar to any other science subject. Schaefer again comes in and argues that initially other sciences were also descriptive in nature. He takes the example of biology. He says biology was initially all descriptive, it was all taxonomy and nothing else, but slowly biology also evolved, and as like any other subject, biology evolved and evolved later into a science. So similarly, geography also initially may be descriptive, but it should, with the dynamics of changing time, should also evolve and should evolve as a science. So in this, he vehemently argues against Hartshorne, and in fact goes as far as telling that in fact Hartshorne is becoming a roadblock of taking geography into a science. And this is what actually excited many of the younger generation and young students. That's how they rallied with the views of Schaefer and were challenging the views of Hartshorne. And then, so these are the three, these are the main and very important. The other are more of what you call metaphysical type of arguments, wherein he says that the Kant's quotes of Hartshorne are misplaced, because whatever Kant has said was during his critical period wherein his philosophical authority was at its peak. But Hartshorne quotes most of Kant's studies in the pre-critical period, which are, may or may not be actually relevant to what Hartshorne has been quoting. He further questions that the pre-critical period which has been written may actually not be Kant's handwriting, because they do not match that handwriting. It could probably what the students has perceived what Kant has said. So there was a question of Kant's writings and his authenticity, the way Hartshorne had picked. Similarly, Schaefer also argues that Hettner, who was followed by Hartshorne, was also selectively quoted, and some of his words, the German words, were also misinterpreted. For example, that Wissenschaft. Wissenschaft is what Hartshorne has inferred is being non-scientific. But if you actually look at that term in broad terms, deep dive and see what that term actually means, it could have actually meant scientific laws and not just laws the way Hartshorne has interpreted. So guys, these are the 5 important, crucial and points which you can clinch the main arguments of Schaefer against Hartshorne, and then of course Hartshorne gives a rejoinder in trying to explain that he did not mean anything like exceptionalism and all that, but that's different. I'll show you in these slides. But please remember those 3 main points of simmering dissatisfaction against the regional concept of taking geography as a science, and remember these 5 main points of Schaefer's arguments against Hartshorne. So this is a very famous, one of the most widely debated topics in the geographical thought. But a question directly may not come regarding the debate, but something related to may come. It could be Hartshorne's contribution, it could be Schaefer's contribution, it could be the simmering dissatisfaction of the regional concept, and why geography could not be considered science, or why geography should be considered as a science. It's a very important topic, but don't get carried away by reading, because a lot of very literary and very interesting articles have been written into that. So the smartness is just stay focused, just remember these 5 points and the 3 points of dissatisfaction of the regional geography. So now I'll take you to the same things but a little more detailed slides. So please remember all these points. This is an important phase in geography. So we have actually continued this American geography as a kind of an extension of the contribution of American geographers. Either way, Hartshorne is very important, his views and why his views were challenged and how he comes back on. So if you are reading Hartshorne, you have read Immanuel Kant and you have also read Hettner, because basically it revolves around those concepts only. Okay guys, so now we'll see some slides. So let's see what Hartshorne had to contribute. Before that, we'll see how the regional geography as a geographic paradigm was so successful between the two wars. So this is the regions paradigm. Region was defined as a part of the Earth's surface with one or more similar characteristics that make it unique compared to the other areas. So the regional geographic paradigm in America reached new heights during the period sandwiched between the First and the Second World War, and that was also the time when Richard Hartshorne had come in, who studied under the stalwarts of Hettner and Keynesian school of thought, and then he also brought in this unique form of geography called the aerial differentiation, and his idea of uniqueness of regions occupied the core and the central position of inquiry in geography for a very long time, and he viewed that geography is concerned with the differences or the variations of different areas on the Earth's surface. So his famous quote that geography is concerned with accurate, orderly and rational description and interpretation of variable character of the Earth's surface. And then later on he goes on to define the aerial differentiation. That is not part of this. I will handle that separately. So according to him, geography is a unique field and the complex interplay of many variables that cannot be controlled, and therefore controlled experiments to study the outcome cannot be undertaken in geography, rendering the discipline incompatible with formulating generalized laws or making a systematic study as required in the other systematic sciences. He argues that we should define and delineate those unique or unit areas in which factors are assumed to be constant, and since no two finite areas on the Earth will ever exhibit the same combinations of factors, such areas are unique. And then he says that the geographer's task is to deliver a thorough description of these places, including perceivable factors, and according to him, if all places are unique, there are either as many laws as unique places, which defeats the purpose of having laws, or no laws at all. So this methodological approach was thus distinguishes geography from the other sciences such as physics, chemistry or mathematics, etc., which were making universal law. But according to him, geography was exceptional as it is not possible to make universal laws. And then he further goes on to say that geography collects facts from places around the globe, and therefore it can create an inventory of knowledge which could then be further classified. But in spite of this regional concept methodology being followed by many, but there was a simmering dissatisfaction about the regional geography started all around in America and elsewhere. So, as I said, the sources of dissatisfaction with the regional geography, there were three. First was that the regional study in geography was pedagogic and could not stand the scientific scrutiny in the mid-century. Second is the many of the works in the regional stream appear to drag through a sequence of unrelated facts, and too much was being put into it without paying any attention towards the actual relationship between the physical environment and its inhabitants. And the third is the marked success of the PACE treatment, particularly in Paris and in and around that, led many students a kind of a false belief that the whole of the Earth's surface can be divided into clearly identifiable regions, each endowed with a uniqueness. But this was not possible actually when you go and take it up realistically, and thus it neglected to look for the general in the particular. So the view to look at things or regions or units in a general way was lost at the cost of looking at them in a particular way. Then came the Edward Ackerman before the outburst of Schaefer. He published a paper saying why the regional work as a core geographical science had led to a neglect in a very systematic perspective of looking at geography as a science. So the pent-up feeling of disappointment with the state of affairs in geography had further found a very forcible voice in terms of Schaefer, who published a paper relating and challenging the exceptionalism of Hartshorne. So that is how Fred Schaefer challenges Hartshorne views. So this is the debate. I have given you the 5 points. Just stick to those 5 points which I gave you in the overview, and just go through some of the points I have listed here as a recap. So first is related to the exceptionalism, and the second is related to the kind of description, pure description, and then third can be related to it being descriptive, on how Kant has brought in both geography and history as descriptive, so geography is only descriptive, etc. And then how Schaefer challenges Kant's view of critical and critical. He says critical views have not been taken into account by Hartshorne, whereas pre-critical period has been taken, and even the pre-critical period, it is not Kant's handwriting, it could probably be the student. So Schaefer challenges the authenticity of the document which Hartshorne depends on, and he argues that the handwriting was not Kant's. And then again, Hartshorne also argues that probably Schaefer also argues that the Hartshorne has misunderstood some of the terms used by Hettner, particularly like Wissenschaft, which has a much broader meaning than the English word science, and it denotes any organized body of knowledge such as law. It could be Wissenschaft, could be law of science. Okay? Schaefer also accused Hartshorne, citing Hettner very selectively, as some of the other work can be quoted as supporting the study of scientific laws instead of it being non-scientific. But it is not that. Unfortunately, Schaefer died and his article was published posthumously. But in spite of that, there was a lot of following from the younger generation of what Schaefer said, because it was more realistic, and it was in tune with those times and the feel of and the pulse of what the young geographers were feeling. So Hartshorne immediately gets a rejoinder. He publishes his own response, and he discredits Schaefer's work as non-scholarly due to lack of evidence or omitted citations and misinterpretation of statements, etc. He announces 2 publications that would clear things up that Schaefer had clouded. First, a line-by-line correction of all omitted citations, and a falsehood in Schaefer's essay, like the summary of passages that contradict the meaning of their author. So second, so he publishes another one, Exceptionalism in Geography Re-examined, in which he comes to the conclusion that the title of the critique led the reader to follow the theme of an apparent major issue, exceptionalism, which proves to be non-existent, or he argues that he has never used that word exceptionalism, nor that he meant that geography was occupied by a domain of what is called as. In other words, Schaefer accused Hartshorne of something that he did not do. So, is the debate a great misunderstanding? Whatever, Schaefer's legacy is undeniable because he flagged main issues related to geography being studied methodologically as regional geography or as science. He clearly came out that whatever be the reason, geography should be studied as science, and these arguments were acceptable to many of the, in fact, everyone, particularly of the younger generation, and that was very healthy for the development of geography. So that is all. Here is a topic where particularly those who are very passionate about geography, they get carried away. After reading for about 3-4 months, they come back to me and said, and they seem totally lost. That's why, guys, just stay focused and just keep track of only these 5 points. That is more than enough for you. You can easily write a very well-rounded, structured, and to the point, focused answer if any question related to this comes. What is more important is trying to understand. It was not that Hartshorne was so different and Schaefer was so different. It is just that they perceived things differently, but it was good that Schaefer has brought in all those points so that Hartshorne could also give a rejoinder and make things much more clearer than simply saying Hettner said this, so I so, or Immanuel Kant said this, so I also say that. So this has helped geography go a very long way. It's a very important debate, but again, at the cost of repeating, please do not get carried away. Treat it like any other topic. Whatever you want to develop later, first get the crux of those 5 points and the 3 points of the dissatisfaction of regional geography. And once you talk about the demerits of regional geography, you can easily move on. And then along with these points of debate, argue that yes, geography should be treated as science, because otherwise it will be left out as a separate discipline and it will lose its individuality. Okay guys, so we'll continue with this, more topics coming up. I'm glad that you're all doing very well. Stay focused and just go for the kill. Stay safe and bye.